All right, here we go again. The Convo back in business. Norm along with Mike. It is Sunday, October 2nd, 2022. So much to talk about on the Maple Leaf front. Mike, let's just get started with some of the big news, and that is Rasmus Sandin re-ups with the team. A bit of a bridge deal, 2 years, $2.8 million. It was all for naught, my friend. This is what the Leafs wanted him to take, and after the theatrics and the temper tantrums and the, you know, the personal exile, he's back in business with the Maple Leafs at the rate we all wanted him to take. Good morning.
Good morning. See, I perceive this. It's funny because it came out after the fact that there have been articles that said, well, Louis Gross's agent contacted the Leafs after Carl Dahlstrom and Jordy Ben got injured and said, let's get this done. I mean, I'm sure Leaf management doesn't care whether that message is put out there, but I highly doubt that was the point of view. That I'm being magnanimous for the team. I don't want all players are in their own self-interest, and I think
right.
He saw the situation where the Leafs were not budging. They were not going to give him the type of money that he apparently was looking for on a second contract. He was looking for Adam Boquist over 2 point is either a number that started with 2, and he wasn't going to get that from the Leafs because they're up against the cap. They offered him 1.4, and 3 months later. And that was the same deal that Timothy Liljegren signed. 3 months later, he takes 1.4. I can only perceive that as a victory for Kyle Dubas because Kyle Dubas sort of held the line and said, no, you're a good player. We like you, but you ain't proven anything yet. And I said that a couple weeks ago. It's like, you perform well and we'll pay you. But right now, it's like, we're up against the cap, and you're a player who's played 88 games, and you've got a lot of potential, but you haven't been able to stay healthy. So this is what you're going to take. And if you don't want to take it on a 2-year deal, then, take the qualifying offer on a 1-year deal or a little above the qualifying offer. And he decided to take the 2-year deal. So I think it's a victory for Kyle Dubas. And now Rasmus Sandin has to prove that he, what his aim was to make more, and that he, sort of been. I mean, I've heard some chatter that Sandin was not exactly happy with the way he's been treated with the Leafs, not playing in the playoffs. But like Robert said, he had no leverage. There was no offer sheet out there.
What is it?
Yeah,
what is it? Mikheyev was like this too. Sandy, come on, guys.
But that's the role. That's the game. You're gonna, and honestly, I have to say, and I go back to this all the time. Kyle Dubas is at fault for that, going back a few years and succumbing to Nylander at the 11th hour and giving basically what he wanted. That gave agents carte blanche to say, okay, we're going to hold his feet to the fire, and he'll surrender. In this instance, Sandin did not have the resume that Nylander had. And they basically said, no, this is what we think you're worth. And, you got to come in and play. And if you come in and play, we'll reward you. And that's what happened. But, I have to say that Kyle Dubas, we know that Nylander is a good player, but you don't do that. And that's what happens when you do that.
Well, Nylander was of elevated status, right? So when you enable that petulance, you should expect it again. But credit to Kyle Dubas, once bitten, twice shy, stood his ground, and now Rasmus Sandin's back at camp with his tail between his legs, Mike, or the guys look at it like, hey, welcome back, kid. Get the fucking work.
No, it's like, we need you. Thanks for being back here. Now let's just get to work. And they have a few preseason games left, so hopefully he gets into 1 or 2 of them before the start of the regular season. And with the injury situation,
there's playing and getting ready and preparing yourself. You want all this money for what? For projected abilities? Go show your.
But they don't want the last thing. Okay, I'll just use this as an example. The Buffalo Bills had some injuries in the defensive backfield. They signed a guy who was a former Pro Bowler put him on the practice squad with the intention of him playing today. They sort of rushed him through practices this week, and he pulled a groin.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want Sandin all of a sudden to come in. Now, he may be working out. It may have been working out and skating in Sweden, but the last thing they want is him to come in the first day of practice, pull a muscle, and then, he's not available. So they're going to take it slow with him, and maybe he gets into 1 or 2 preseason games before.
Yeah, and that's an important thing right now, especially for a team like the Leafs that is bitten by the injury bug. Right? A lot of guys are injured, and it's about being smart with what you've got, because the last thing the Leafs want to do is see more players injured or nursing ailments before the puck drops on the first game of the new season. Colin M in community, youtube.com/Leafs Convo. What a giant waste of time. He's referring to the whole situation with Rasmus Sandin. Chris, can't believe we went through all of that drama for such a low cap hit. Not to beat a dead horse here, Mike, but Kyle Dubas stood his ground, did what he had to do on behalf of the team, trying to clean up a little bit of a mess that he created all those years back. But good on him, and let's get down to the business of developing another great season, and hopefully it can parlay into playoff success, because the Leafs, everything rides on the Leafs doing well in the playoffs. This is the Convo. Norm along with Mike. As you know, we are without a sponsor, so be sure to go check out Mike's stuff, hockeybuzz.com. He does fantastic work reporting on the Maple Leafs, getting all the details that we need to chew on daily. Mike, thank you for everything. It's funny, I went on to Google just to search today Maple Leafs, and one of your columns came up, and just a ranking of the players. So it's nice to see you having that platform and knowing that your stuff is widely read. Last week and the week before, we were talking a little bit about how Nick Robertson might fit into the process. 2 weeks ago, we were thinking he might earn a spot on the second line. Last week, it was, who are you, Nick? You're not playing well enough. You're not showing anything. Show some hustle and harder. You're going to end up in the minors to start. Well, 3 goals later, what's your opinion on him?
Well, I mean, it's funny because I thought he started in the rookie tournament a bit slow. I know that he had in one of the early games, had a bad giveaway that ended up in the back of the Toronto net. I thought he started the training camp slow, really wasn't, I think wasn't very noticeable. And then obviously the last few games he's been scoring. He's going to have to score to be a factor in potentially making this team. Now, the injury situation is something that it could be a factor here. I'm sure probably going to talk about Tavares in a second.
Yep.
But the fact that Engvall is out and we don't know if he's going to be available at the beginning of the season, the fact that they're going to have to move things around, probably a reaction to the Tavares injury will be Alex Kerfoot moving to the middle until Tavares is back. That opens up a spot as a second line left winger. Then the question is, do you want to put, do you think that Nick Robertson is ready, even on a short-term basis, to try that? Because honestly, if it's a situation where it's either he plays for the Marlies or he's playing on the third or fourth line, he's playing for the Marlies, because I mean, the salary is low enough and that's all good, but I think he is a scorer. He is a guy who fits into a top 6 role. And if he's not playing a top 6 role in the NHL, then he needs to play a top 6 role in the AHL. They've got time with him. He's only 20, he just turned 21 years old. So, I think time is on his side. It is on the Leafs side. But if he's continuing to score like he has been, then I think he gets an early look. And he's earning it right now. He's putting the puck in the net. He's playing well. The concern I think that the Leafs have, and that I would have as an observer, is if you're playing a top 6 role, you have to not only be responsible offensively, you have to be responsible in a two-way way.
Well, that's the way the Leafs play, right?
Right. And the factor here is, and I keep mentioning this guy in sort of a negative connotation, if you're on a second line with Kerfoot sort of playing out of position. He played left wing last year. He'd be playing center. And William Nylander, who on a good day is a good two-way player, but most of the time is average to below average. You can't have a rookie who's going to give away the puck. So,
Right.
in terms of defensive responsibility, you have to make sure that Robertson is covering his bases. And if he does that, then he gets a look. But there's just as much of a chance that guys like Carl Yarncroke or maybe Dennis Mulligan, who's also had a good camp, get a chance like that early on, and they send Robertson to the minors. But right now he's earning extra looks, and I think that's a good thing.
So when we looked at the team about a month ago, just the players, the dynamic, the perception could have been there are just way too many bodies. How do some of these younger guys fit in and get an opportunity to make their mark? Here we are, a week and a bit out from the beginning of the new season. Rasmus Sandin back in the mix will play a vital role because he's required. Obviously, with lack of bodies on defense right now, you're having veterans like Giordano and Riley offer up their services to do different things than they normally would, or we'd prefer them to do. So that's a good opportunity for someone like Sandin. On the flip side, Nick Robertson has an opportunity as well to I don't know if it's an audition or give himself a shot at being a permanent part of the forward core with John Tavares not able to play. I mean, who knows with a strained oblique, you just and at his age, who knows how long he could be out. We're hoping it's not a protracted injury where it's complicated. But I mean, that's the beauty of it right now, Mike. Opportunity knocks for some of these players, and instead of whining about money or not getting the opportunity, step on the ice and get things done. And Rasmus Sandin will hopefully follow suit with what Nick Robertson's doing right now, and that's mixing things up and making the brass think twice about some of the things that they're up to.
Well, in the interim of Liljegren being available, which probably won't be until the middle of November. Right. Your six defensemen are Riley, Brody, Muzzin, Hall, Giordano, and Sandin. Jordy Ben is not available right now. It doesn't sound like a serious injury. I think it was a high ankle sprain, but he's not going to be available. Dahlstrom may be having surgery on his shoulder. They may go with six defensemen and maybe a seventh of somebody like Victor Mete, who, God forbid, if they have to play him, because I just don't think he's a good NHL defenseman. But he has NHL experience, so if they have to, that's fine. One of those lefties is going to have to play the right side if that's the six that are available. Up front, I mean, right now, like I said, the Tavares injury, and we know the Leafs. The Leafs are going to be extra careful when it comes to a guy like Tavares.
Good.
Not because he's older, but because this is an injury that he's had before. He had a pulled oblique or a strained oblique after a season, and when he was going to go to the World Championships, and then they decided he didn't or he couldn't go. They want to make sure that there's not a reoccurrence. So, and last year, if you remember, Peter Mrazek got injured. He came back after 2 weeks, and he injured I think it was an ankle, and he was out for 6 weeks. So better to take an extra week and make sure that Tavares is 100% healthy. And they have enough versatility up front that they can survive a couple weeks without Tavares up the middle. Like somebody in the chat, I'm sorry, you're clueless if you say Kerfoot is not talented. He is talented. You just don't. I mean, this is probably you don't like Kerfoot because he was traded for Nazem Kadri. Would you friggin' get
okay?
for Christ's sake.
Leave the comments for now. Just continue on. We'll get to the comments in a second.
It's just dumb. I mean, he's a center. He can play center. He's good defensively. You know, he stepped into the breach when Tavares got hurt in the playoffs, and that line with Galchenyuk and Nylander was the best line that the Leafs had. So they can survive a couple weeks without John Tavares.
Yeah, and you want Alex Kerfoot to play well because you're eventually going to trade him for Jacob Chychrun. So
yeah, and we'll get to that.
It's going to be part of a package.
Yeah. Well, no, somebody in the chat said, "Oh, trade Jacob." You cannot trade your junk. And I'm not saying Jake Muzzin is junk, but you cannot trade. Clearly, there's a section of the Leaf fan base that wants to trade Jake Muzzin because they think he's old, he's falling apart, he's making $5.6 million. It's like, okay, what makes you think Arizona wants a 33-year-old defenseman who's making $6 million? They don't.
It's always, Mike. It's always this way. When somebody on your team is not performing or you don't like them, you want to trade them, get rid of them. And rarely is it, well, just get rid of him and we'll take back random player. It's always, our guy sucks, let's get rid of him. Why don't we trade him for somebody really good?
Mm-hmm. And
the logic is impeccable.
Yeah, and so, but just getting back to the whole forward situation, Robertson has a chance to make this team, but only if they are going to say he's going to play on the top two lines. If they think that there's a better combination there where like Yarncroke, who can play the wing or center, plays on the second line with Nylander and Kerfoot for a couple weeks and then moves down to the third line.
Yeah.
And Robertson only earns a third or fourth line look, then he's going to play with the Marlies. And they're going to, because they want him to get experience. They want him to stay healthy, score goals, round out his game. If they think he's ready now, I don't think they'll hesitate, but I think it's only if he's going to play in a primary role and not in a secondary role.
Robert B., do you guys think Dubas is waiting to trade Kerfoot for the right deal still, or is Kerfoot going to be here for the season? It'll be Kerfoot talk, Mike. Kerfoot talk throughout the season. I mean, he's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. With him, he's fine here, but he could be a piece to something else if
with Kerfoot
required.
With Kerfoot, I believe it is they are not trading him right now because they need him, because they need that versatility to play up the middle. If it is proved midway through the season that Malgin or Robertson or they think that Matthew Nyes can come in after the NCAA season is over with.
How about that for a second line? Malgin, Kerfoot, Nylander.
Yeah, no. I mean, I have to give Dennis Malgin credit. He has played very well in the preseason. I think he's earning himself a spot. I mean, obviously he's he's got NHL experience. He's played 2 years in Switzerland. His game seems a little different. I mean, remember he played 8 games with the Leafs and didn't even get a sniff.
Yeah. He wanted another chance to be underwhelming again in Toronto. So.
Well, and some people like me still hold it, and it's not his fault, but some people like me still hold it against him that the Leafs decided to trade Mason Marchment for him. If Malgin contributes and he's a speedy player, he's a smart player, he's good defensively, but he needs to score if he's playing in a third, fourth line role. So I mean, if he earns a spot, then I think he's a better fit as a bottom six than Nick Robertson is. Nick Robertson has to be in a scoring role to be effective, and if he's not in a scoring role here, he's going to be in a scoring role at Coca-Cola Coliseum.
Yeah. Anush Patel, way too early to say if Malgin is actually able to be a regular in the NHL. Like, hopefully it's not with the Maple Leafs.
Well,
they've got enough other guys you could put in there. Like, it's just there's like Dennis Malgin is the guy who is going to elevate the team.
Well, okay, first of all,
just an aside, and I'm not saying you can't contribute and you don't have extra guys on deck and help out here and there. It's like, oh, Dennis Morgan's playing tonight. Somebody got hurt. It's mid-February. Okay, sure, but
first
what do
of
we
all,
care about this guy?
he has almost 200 games of NHL experience, so he's an experienced NHLer. Like Darren just said. But the thing, this will be a big factor when it comes to decisions made. Is waivers, is the fact that Zach Aston Reese, who I think they'll sign to a contract, Nicholas Aube-Kubel, who I don't think they're going to, there's a chance he's not going to make the team. He's going to make the team.
All the hyphenated name guys, anybody with a hyphenated name is in.
Yeah. Yes. Michael Paul Augello. No, but Zach Aston Reese, Aube-Kubel, Wayne Simmons, Kyle Clifford, all these guys have to clear waivers.
Right.
Pontus Holmberg, who's at a good camp. Alex Steeves, who's at a good camp.
Right.
Robertson, they don't. And the thing is, when it's a decision between somebody who you could potentially lose, I think like Morgan could get claimed. I don't know about Simmons. I don't know about Clifford. Maybe they're at the last part of their career where, and they're slowing down and teams wouldn't want to take them off the Leafs' hands. But guys like Morgan, guys like Aston Reese, those players will get claimed. So that might be a factor when it comes to roster decisions. Now, right now, they're going to have some room on the cap because of Liljegren probably going on LTIR, and I don't know, if Tavares would go on LTIR, because that would eliminate him for 3 weeks into the regular season. I don't think they want to do that, so he's going to go on IR. But in terms of cap space, they'll get a little bit of a break from Liljegren going on LTIR, and more than likely that's going to prevent the decision having to be made on defense about like who's going to stay, who's going to go. I think it's more likely Justin Hall gets traded before Alex Kerfoot gets traded, because there's depth on the blue line, whereas there's not as much depth at center.
Right.
But if Kerfoot, if Tavares is out.
That's the conundrum right now. The Leafs have a lot of bodies, a lot of options, but hard to utilize all of those options and get full value for them when some of those options are injured. So, I mean, it's going to be a work in progress. The story has yet to unfold, but we'll be here to take it all in. Was that Matt Murray's first action of the preseason the other night against the Habs?
Yes, it was.
Not bad. I mean, if he plays a game and he leaves the game healthy, that's a win, because skill wise, he's a, never mind his cup wins and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they could have put anybody in net, and just it's opportunistic, but he's a good goaltender, and if he's splitting duty with somebody like Samsonov and he's healthy, I mean, I know people talk about question marks in net, but I feel like if the two of them can work together and those two guys can carve out a full season each in their own ways, that I'm not worried so much about what's happening between the pipes. That's just me.
The concern about Matt Murray is not ability, it's availability.
Mm-hmm.
It's whether he can stay healthy. Now, again, I'm not going to judge anything based on preseason hockey, because last year the best goaltender in the preseason was Peter Mrazek. So, then we saw how that ended up. So I think that, they're going to, it's not going to be a 41-41 split, but it's going to be probably, if Matt Murray stays healthy, Matt Murray is going to probably play 50 games, or maybe 45 to 50,
right.
and Samsonov is going to play, say, 32 to 37 games. So it'll be a split.
Right.
Now, let me just answer this in the chat, because I just saw Chris Daniels posted. He says, I saw a report the Leafs are interested in Anton Strom. Anton Stroman was invited on a PTO to the Bruins.
Right.
Now he's a right-handed defenseman, but I don't think that they're interested in anybody outside the organization, unless like Dahlstrom is out for the rest of the season or something like that, unless they're all of a sudden, and if you're signing a 34-year-old veteran like Anton Strom, former Leaf, who's played with Tampa and Florida and the Rangers, you're guaranteeing him an NHL job, and they're right now, I think they're at 48 contracts. And Aston Reese would make 49. So that more than likely, unless they're trading somebody out, I don't see it. I don't see it.
What else did I want to get at here? Anything else on Tavares? I think we've covered it. They just
Yeah,
want to take their time with this guy. I
yeah.
don't know, Mike, if at this point in his career we see him grinding out 82 games any longer. Look, he was an 09 draft. It's 2022, 23. He's getting up there.
Yeah, but
And
he's not ready for Social Security. I mean, this is the thing. It's like I'll say this. It's like for a guy like Muzzin, I think there'll be some load management. I'd be surprised if he plays. Barring any unforeseen injury, I think he plays 65 to 70 games instead of 82.
right.
Tavares, I think is going to play as many games as he possibly can. I don't think that there's we talked to him at the beginning of training camp. He had a chance to do a full off-season workout situation because he wasn't coming off the concussion like he was before last training camp. This was just a pulled muscle, and it happens. So I don't think that this is something that all of a sudden you have to start worrying about, like tapering down his workload. I think he's fine, and once he's cleared from this injury, I think he's going to play every day. But there are some older players, like don't be surprised if Giordano gets the occasional game off like Spezza did, and maybe Muzzin if they have an extra defenseman round that they'll give him a night off, like maybe in the second of back-to-back or something like that.
So on Jacob Chychrun, he wants out of Arizona, the same place that Austin Matthews wants to go to.
Oh God!
So it all makes sense, right? Yeah. Man, I mean, a guy at that age had some was really good a couple of years ago, got some Norris Trophy consideration at a point right now where he feels like his current location sucks, and he's got a bit of status, so I understand where he's coming from. Lots of teams in on the discussion when it comes to potential acquisition are the Leafs could package up a bunch of guys. Does it make sense for the Leafs to make a trade for Jacob Chychrun? Never mind whether they do or not. In your opinion, with who they have and what's happening right now, should the Leafs consider themselves, among the teams that should take a run at this guy, not just to bring in somebody flashy or another name, but because they feel like the benefits would outweigh the pitfalls?
Does it make sense? Yes. It depends on what the price will be. Now, Arizona has apparently softened their ask in terms of, they were asking for 4 first-round equivalents. They were asking for the same type of package that Buffalo was asking for Jack Eichel, and then Buffalo lowered that demand to 3 first-round equivalents, which ended up being Alex Tuch, Peyton Krebs, and a number 1. I think that's probably along the lines of what Arizona is looking for Chychrun. Now, Chychrun, does it make sense for the Leafs? Yes, he's a lefty shot, but he's a right hand. He can play the right side, so he can play both sides. He's 24 years old. He's under contract for 3 this year and 2 more years at $4.6 million, which is less than Brody, less than Muzzin, and less than Riley. So the salary's in line. Now, the issue here is what it would cost. And first of all, the Leafs would have to be able to open. Arizona is not going to want to retain salary on Chychrun, but apparently one of the things that Darren Drager reported as, along with the Leafs' potential interest, was the fact that Arizona would be willing to take a salary back to make the deal work. Okay, so assume that's either Hall or maybe Kerfoot, but I would think of Hall because we're talking defense. More than likely, you're talking about a deal that would be a first-round pick, one of the young defensemen, either Rasmus Sandin or Timothy Liljegren, probably Sandin because he's a lefty, but maybe not, or it could be a prospect like Topi Niemelä. And then you're talking a forward prospect. You're talking a Nyes or a Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hefty price.
Right.
But you have to factor in the fact that Kyle Dubas is under the gun here. This team, I don't think that they will hesitate to make a move that they think will put them to give them a better chance to advance in the playoffs. That the clock is ticking here,
and it wouldn't be like the Leafs. It's not like Kyle Dubas would be emptying the cupboards.
No, and he's not.
Just to bring this guy in hopes that he's the one who can lead this team past game 82 and then past game 7 and then into another series. It's a strategic move, potentially, and one that could bear fruit and one that could strengthen the forward group, bring more youth back, and maybe kind of the Leafs can divest themselves of some of those extra bodies in the process, but easier said than done.
Well, and it's not exactly a Larry Anderson for Jeff Bagwell deal where you're trading for a guy who's a relief pitcher in baseball or an expiring contract. Right. Chychrun is under contract for 2 more years. Now, the downside about Chychrun is he's had a history of being injured. I know that he had off-season surgery on an ankle and on his wrist. So he's fully healthy now. So, that's, now, okay, Mike, you're wrong. You're just completely wrong. I mean,
I love throwing you off.
Matthew,
I love throwing you off. You can't.
Matthew Nyes is an A-list prospect. I don't care where he was drafted. Robertson, you could say yes, because he's had injury problems and, he hasn't proven it yet. But and I'm sure Arizona would want Nyes because he's from Arizona, but I don't think the Leafs, unless you're talking a head up 1-for-1 Matthew Nyes or Jacob Chychrun, the Leafs are not including Nyes in a deal for Chychrun. But I think it's doable. But there are also 7 or 8 other teams where it's doable. So now it's a question of which team is going to offer the best package. Do I think the Leafs can offer the best one? It depends on whether Bill Armstrong, the GM of the Arizona Coyotes, likes the prospects that the Leafs are offering up.
Yeah,
if he does, then
that's the thing, right? Like
that's always the thing.
It feels like the world revolves around us. If the Leafs want to make the trade, they'll trade for him and get who they want, but get in line.
Yeah. So,
hey, Mike, I have to think that Shohei Ohtani, this 2-position guy pitching and hitting, I mean, he's going to be in the conversation potentially for MVP again, but I think he's won his 1 MVP, and that's pretty much it, unless he just does ridiculous stuff, because you could essentially give it to him every year because he's the only guy who does it. But I don't know if he has anything on this potential two-way guy in Mitch Marner, who is a dynamic forward, but may also play defense too. Like he could be the Shohei Ohtani of the NHL. Defense, forward. Wow,
yeah.
But, I mean, what are they trying to do? Turn him into Ryan Ellis? Like,
hey, folks, shiny object. Look over here. I mean, it's like honestly, because Kalle Järnkrok and Alex Kerfoot had to play defense, and then the next day, all of a sudden, they're experimenting with Mitch Marner playing defense. They're experimenting in the fact that if they're down by a goal in the 3rd period, they're going to play 4 forwards. It's not exactly revelatory. It's like, okay, they play 4 forwards on the power play. So what they're talking about is using a power play alignment 5-on-5. And yes, Mitch Marner is responsible defensively. So, but do I think this is all of a sudden, oh my God, all of a sudden they're going to be playing positionless hockey? Bull crap. I mean, I think they're looking like any good organization, they're sort of thinking outside the box, and they're saying, okay, what can we do to improve our offense in certain situations? And is Mitch Marner responsible defensively? Well, he's responsible enough defensively to play sort of that pivot, half board or point on the power play. So you'll experiment with that. And if you're down a goal or 2 in the 3rd period and looking to generate more offense, then Marner technically is playing defense. But no, more than likely you're playing with 4 forwards, and that's not exactly thinking outside of the box.
Well, by any means necessary. It's not like Leafs are desperate, but they've got a lot of guys who can do a lot of things, and versatility is a plus. We all know that. Mike, we should probably wrap this thing up.
Yep.
Aaron Judge, it's his 61st in Toronto. Did you see the guy in left field, the fan who
Yes.
almost caught it?
Yeah, you should have brought like a butterfly net or something like that. You'd have been better off. I mean, I don't know how close he was, like a foot away from catching it. Right?
Have you ever caught a foul ball at
a game? In a minor league game, not a major league game. I almost got killed by a line drive at Yankee Stadium about 15 years ago. It hit the seats like 2 rows in front of me, and it dented the seat. But I've never caught one in a major league game. Judge's accomplishment is incredible, and I was actually thinking about, I was going to go up for Tuesday night's game,
right?
But there were no seats in the outfield, and I wanted an opportunity to catch, even though I think like the odds are about 2 billion to 1, especially with the way.
You bring your glove?
I wouldn't have brought a glove. That's I'm not 12 years old.
I like the guys in their 30s and 40s with their gloves.
Well, it's a $2 million catch. So yeah. But anyway,
awesome. I love those.
I am starting to worry a little bit about him hitting 62, because he really yesterday the pitcher for Baltimore really didn't give him much to hit.
Right.
Nobody wants to be the Tim Mesa and give up 62.
Yeah, I love Tim Mesa though. He's just like, whatever. He's great pitcher. The thing is, there's 2 ways to look at it. If you're like 5 pitches, if you're 5 pitches to the guy and he's down at first base, that's one thing. But you can't shit on a pitcher after he's 3-2 with Judge, and Judge has fouled 3 or 4 off, and then he tries to nibble a corner and walks him. That's just Judge being a good hitter. Like, Judge's on base percentage is rising so rapidly right now with all of the walks. I mean, he leads the league in walks. I mean, he leads the league in so many categories. He's just such a good hitter. I'm sure he'd like to tee off on 62, but he's also not going to swing at bullshit pitches, because he is in totality putting together such a fucking amazing season. It's a unbelievable to watch, and the fact that he's lapped the field in home runs, that is remarkable in and of itself. We don't see that very often. He's just had such a great season, and if anybody doesn't have him number 1 on their MVP vote, that we talked about the Hall of Fame and players and baseball and up and down history. There's a lot of people with a lot of say who really should be put out to pasture. But it's phenomenal to watch. I'm happy that you have your team in the playoffs, and I'm obviously a major Blue Jays fan, and I'm glad that they're in the playoffs too. I'm hoping they can hang on a little bit here and earn home field advantage for the wild card series thing. It looks like it'll be Jays Seattle. I don't think the Jays have much of a chance out in Seattle, even with all the Blue Jays fans potentially being there. But at home, I think they're going to get through and play Houston. Well, that's about it for me, Mike. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
2 quick things. A big factor for Jays Mariners would be J-Rod and whether he's available. He's I think he's got a sore back, and he's been on the DL or IL, excuse me. So, other thing, courtesy of our friend David Alter, who is always at Leaf practices, Rasmus Sandin is playing the right side with Jake Muzzin in practice.
Right.
Riley is playing the left side with TJ Brody. Giordano is playing with Justin Hall. That doesn't mean that that's what the lineup's going to be for the season, but if they're practicing it, more than likely that's what they're going to use. Also, Nick Robertson is playing on the second line with Nylander and Kerfoot. So that just illustrates what we were talking about.
I think those 3 can do some things, right? And it's a scoring line, but there is defensive responsibility from somebody like Kerfoot. And we talk about Nylander and his deficiencies, but look, he's been in the league now how many years? 8. And it's time for his game to go to the next level. Not for us, but for himself. We know he's a dynamic scorer, offensively amazing. You know, he's here and then he's not, and then he's here and then he's not. I'm hoping he can sustain a level of play throughout the entire season, just mature as an individual in a professional sport. And if that's the case, man, again, the outlook for this Maple Leafs team, even with the early injuries and, you know, just kind of the shuffling of the deck potentially of players positionally, it's great. The Leafs should be another 100-point team, should put themselves in position to contend for the division, and again, put themselves in position to have playoff success. And at this point, that's really all we can ask. Make sure, guys, you subscribe to the Leafs Convo on YouTube. Tons of content coming out. This is episode 5 of the new season. We're going to be here every single week with all kinds of content and commentary and conversation. And yeah, we appreciate everything you do for us. It's been a wild and amazing return this first month. The numbers are off the chart. The participation you guys are giving us in terms of viewership and listenership is phenomenal. Keep it coming. It propels us forward, and all of us together can, you know, do amazing things, you know, as a group in this world of fandom revolving around the beloved and sometimes hated Maple Leafs. But again, we're all in it together. Mike, I think he's going to do 62 today. I think it's happening. Unless Aaron Boone's.
It'd be nice. Last game at Yankee Stadium before the playoffs. It'd be nice, but we'll see.
Guys, thank you so much. We'll talk to you in a week.